Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
All right, welcome back to Big Country Politics. A familiar face with us, Dr. Paul Fabrizio with McMurray University, political science professor over there. Thank you again for being here.
It's good to be here.
It's a big day for us because we just got done with Super Tuesday. We're looking forward to more races to come in May, 2 more races to come, and of course the big one in November. I guess They're all big, aren't they?
Depends on your perspective,
I guess.
But we went through probably the second biggest race of the year was Super Tuesday, and next one, the biggest, of course, is the November election. So, and then there's the local elections, which will be in May, and runoffs, that sort of stuff. So.
That's right. And I want to start with Super Tuesday.
Yes.
Even though we talked a lot about it on Super Tuesday, we were live on Facebook for those of you who are watching. As the results rolled in, what was the biggest surprise for you on Super Tuesday, if there was one?
There was, and it was how well Joe Biden did.
It's the biggest surprise for everybody.
It certainly is. And you look at what happened since then. Mike Bloomberg dropped out of the race, and Elizabeth Warren dropped out of the race. So we're basically down to a two-person race, and who would have thought this would have occurred 2 weeks ago?
Well, even on Super Tuesday, when we were live on Facebook, we were basically just talking about Biden and Sanders, weren't we?
Yes, we sure were. Because Biden just did so much better than what was expected. He is basically tied, if you will. We're still waiting for California's final votes. But basically they're going into the next contest tied in the delegates, and nobody expected that to happen. And so that means that Biden really, because of the contests that are coming up, they're filled with voters who Biden is more attractive to. Biden is in the driver's seat going into the Democratic convention.
When I've seen an interview since Super Tuesday with Biden, he said he wasn't surprised picking up the southern states. It was those northern states that he was surprised at.
Yeah,
and I think everybody was.
Yeah, Minnesota, and the big one, of course, Massachusetts. I mean,
he mentioned that. He said
Yeah, it's Elizabeth Warren's home state. Bernie Sanders is right next door, and so you figured one of those two was going to win it, and then Biden came out on top. And for Elizabeth Warren, that was the end of her campaign. If she can't win her home state, why is she in the race?
What does Sanders need to do?
That's a really tough question for him. He talks about expanding the electorate. He talks about being attractive to African American voters. He hasn't proved it yet. He talks about being multi-generational, going after older voters, middle-aged and younger voters. He hasn't done it yet. That's what he needs to do. He needs to have his actions match his words. And he hasn't been able to do it. And even deeper, he hasn't done as well as he did 4 years ago. And so because he's not doing as well as he did 4 years ago, what reason do people have to think that that's going to change? And I think the Democratic establishment sees it, and they're saying Joe Biden is our person.
Well, you mentioned the Democratic establishment. What has changed there in the last 4 or so years? During the last campaign, what has changed for Sanders? Why is he not doing as well?
Sanders, this is going to sound strange possibly, but Sanders is old news. I mean, what is he saying today that was different than four years ago, except for talking about Donald Trump? I mean, he has the same consistent message, and sometimes the American voters want to hear something new. And I'm not sure that he will be able to do that. Biden, you know, Biden is a comfortable shoe that you wear, it feels good. He's not going to be a radical change or anything like that. And so in a certain sense, he doesn't have anything new, but at the same time, he'll be new compared to Trump if he wins. And I'm not sure if everybody's following that, but there's a difference between the two. Go ahead.
Well, you're saying the problem with Sanders is that he's old news. He hasn't changed, and that's his problem. But you're also saying, by the same token, that Biden is like an old shoe, an old comfortable shoe that you put on. Kind of the same. I mean,
Sanders is not comfortable. Okay? Sanders is not comfortable, and he doesn't try to make you comfortable. Biden's campaign is premised around the fact that he is not Donald Trump. He is not the angry Bernie Sanders. So therefore, that's a message that we haven't heard in how long? I don't know. So I would argue, in a certain sense, Biden's message is actually new.
You think he's middle of the road now? I mean, because
in the context of the politics of today, he is the moderate candidate. Wow. But again, still on the Democratic side. Okay, it's a real question if there's any moderate Republicans, if they would move towards Joe Biden. I have no idea. It's too soon to tell.
Wow, very interesting. So, what's next for Elizabeth Warren? She's dropped out of the race.
She's dropped out of the race. She goes back to being a senator. She dropped out probably at a good time, because if she had continued in the race, her effectiveness, her political judgment would have been called into question. She tried the best she could. Her message simply didn't resonate as the campaign went on. So she'll go back and be a U.S. Senator. If there is a Biden or Trump or Sanders administration, she conceivably could be in the cabinet. She is also a possibility for vice president.
When we can, that was my next question. When we come back from break, I want to talk about the local races, but I want to put you on the spot here. Who is the best contender as vice president? We talked a little bit about this off the air on Super Tuesday.
Yes. I can't wait. Are we ready? We want to do it now?
Well, I want to do it now before we get to the local races when we come back from break.
So, who's the best choices? You have to think about Elizabeth Warren for vice president. Of course, it depends on who the presidential candidate is going to be. So Elizabeth Warren comes up, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris. All of them have gone out in the national stage. They've been unsuccessful, but they've been out in the national stage. So that gives them a leg up over other people. Then you think about the African-American woman from Georgia, Stacey Abrams. She's always mentioned as a possibility. Some people are talking about Julian Castro. He ran for president, didn't get very far, as another possibility. And then you think about maybe Amy Klobuchar. And then you could create a long list of members of the House of Representatives, a couple people in the Senate who might be out there. What you know for sure is that it will not be a white male.
Well, a lot of people out there who are watching right now are asking the TV, what about Beto O'Rourke?
Beto O'Rourke is a white male. I do not believe that whoever the Democratic nominee is will choose a white male. The party prizes itself on its diversity. So the last thing it wants in competing against Donald Trump and Mike Pence is to have two white males there. So I think if you're a white male, you're not going to be a vice presidential choice. So you think about women, you think about members of minority groups.
All right. When we come back on Big Country Politics, we're going to talk about the local results and the races upcoming. All right. We'll be back on Big Country Politics.